Hi guys, Charles here. I would like to speak to you about the Trinity. All the scriptures I'm going to use, you know already. And at the end, listen, I have something to say that I've never heard before. A friend at work mentioned it, and I'd like to pass it on to you. That is very interesting about the Trinity. It's a concept, a way of thinking. Now, Jesus and the Father and the Holy Spirit, people say they're one, which I believe they are one, but they're also three. So that kind of sounds confusing. How can they be one yet all three? So I'm going to see if I can try to explain it and make it a little clearer and more logical thinking where you don't have to twist your brain around to try to believe something on faith when it plainly says what it says. So Jesus in Revelation sit down on the right hand side of the Father. When Jesus was baptized, the Holy Spirit landed on him, and the Father said, "This is my Son, in whom I'm well pleased." Now, the Father handed Jesus the scroll, and he could open it now. So who put the scroll together in the first place, and how can they hand the scroll to himself? Jesus said, "Pray to the Father." He didn't say pray to me, he said pray to the Father. And you can pray to Jesus, I believe. That's another story. But they're interacting with each other. He said, "This is my Son in whom I'm well pleased." Now, Jesus is going to come back to the earth. They don't say the Father, it says Jesus is coming back to the earth, which he is. And the Father will come out of heaven after Jesus gets the earth ready for him after 1,000 years. So the Father's in heaven, Jesus is on the earth again, and the Father comes back down out of heaven and brings New Jerusalem with him. So we have all that said. Now, how can they both be one if they're supposedly two different people? I give many more examples about the differences between the two, how they interact with each other. Man and wife. In the beginning, God created man. And when he created man, he took Eve out of his side. So woman comes from man. And he says, "You two now are one." If my wife sits beside me, you're not going to say, "Oh, you guys are the same person, you should sit in the same seat." No, we're one. I'm responsible for her. She's responsible for me. We're supposed to be on the same page and work together. Some do, some don't. But you're one. You work for the same goals. You have children. Your goal is with the children. Foods and, work and stuff. So that's how Jesus and the Father are one. The Holy Spirit is a different matter. That's really hard to explain the Holy Spirit. It's power, but yet it could be a person. It could be an entity. So that the Bible's not very clear on that. And so how they all three are one, they're on the same accord. They have the same goals. Jesus said, "Me and the Father are one. I have the same goals as him." That's what it means. And if you think that they're one, they're the same person, it don't make no sense. How can it make sense? You have to scratch your head and say, "I'm taking it on faith that they're the same entity." Now, let me say something that, okay, I'll start with this. Man and wife, when God created man, he breathed the breath of life into him. Probably it was Jesus that did it, because Jesus was the one in the Garden of Eden with them. Everybody, they're separate. The Father's still in heaven because nobody's ever seen the Father at any time. So it had to be Jesus that was in the garden. He breathed the breath of life. It came from his body into our body, and we became living spirits, living beings. So it's a part of him to us, a part of man to his wife. Both man and woman together have a child. The child is from both of them, so he's part of them. He's one with them. So now here's the part that I was told, and it's going to sound weird. It's going to sound strange, I'm sure, because it did to me until I thought more about it. This is God's MO of giving part of himself, us, part of ourself. He didn't give it to animals. He gave it to man only. So don't go there with the animals. So what if the Father, which took a part of himself and made Jesus? It's his Son. He took part of himself and gave it to Mary, and there was Jesus. He became one. He became man like us with the spirit and breath of God, made us a living soul. God put part of himself with Mary, and then Jesus became a living soul. So that's another story of whether you live forever or not. But think about that. The Father gave part of himself. It ain't just he made it happen. He gave part of himself. So I hope you enjoyed this, and leave me comments and tell me what you think. Okay? Thank you guys. Food for thought.